Imagine you live in like this ultra-luxury high-rise condo.
Okay.
The plumbing is just flawless. The hallways are pristine. You're completely safe. The amenities are incredible. And the heating literally always kicks in before you even realize you're cold.
Sounds pretty nice, honestly.
Right. But so there's a catch. You have absolutely zero say in who actually manages the building.
Ah, okay.
You don't get to vote on the board. You don't even know who the shadowy ownership group is. And you have literally no power to change the rules. So do you care?
Well, I mean, most people would argue they care deeply. Human nature kind of dictates this desire for autonomy, right?
Right.
We want a voice in how our own house is run.
Exactly. Even if the current management is doing a really decent job.
Yeah, you still want to know who's holding the keys.
But today's author argues that if you do care about who manages that building, if you prioritize your right to have a say over the perfection of the plumbing, you are suffering from a fundamental cognitive error.
That is a strong claim.
It is. Welcome to this deep dive. You are here listening to this right now because you're always looking to unpack complex, sometimes really uncomfortable ideas from multiple perspectives, and you want to do it without getting lost in the noise.
And the text we are decoding today is definitely the definition of uncomfortable.
Totally. We are looking at an essay written by an author named Xu Feng. This was published on March 25th, 2024. And, I mean, the title alone tells you exactly what kind of waters we are wading into here.
Right. It's titled The Merits of Colonization and the Benefits of Cultural Assimilation.
Yeah.
But before we go a single step further, we really need to establish a very clear framework for this discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
This text contains highly provocative, politically charged, and just entirely unconventional viewpoints on global history.
Very unconventional.
Right. And our goal in this analysis is absolutely not to endorse, validate, or even debate these viewpoints against the broader historical record. We're acting strictly as a mirror today.
We're just reflecting what's on the page.
Exactly. We are here to impartially report on what the author wrote and decode the specific logic he uses. This way, you, the listener, can understand the exact mechanics of the argument being made in the source material.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Right.
So we're putting his logic under the microscope. And the central, highly controversial premise that he builds everything else on is this assertion that ordinary people make a massive mistake when they value national independence over their own personal material comfort.
Yeah, he roots this entire worldview in a very specific, almost clinical philosophy of human priorities.
Oh, so.
Well, before he even touches the concepts of geopolitics or history, Swifeng defines what he believes the ultimate singular goal in life should be for the ordinary person.
Which is?
He argues that life should be entirely about pursuing a comfortable, relaxed, wealthy, and healthy existence.
So just pure material and physical well-being.
Basically, yeah. Happiness, joy, freedom from daily stress. These are, for him, the only metrics that actually matter for a successful life.
Wow. Okay, so he is completely stripping away all the romance and ideology from governance. He's looking at the state purely as a service provider.
Very much so.
To bring it back to that condo analogy from the start, he's basically saying that as long as the management company keeps your day-to-day life completely stress-free, the identity, the nationality, or, the history of the ownership group is just totally irrelevant to your daily happiness.
He actually goes even further than calling it irrelevant.
Really?
Yeah. He explicitly claims that for everyday people, prioritizing abstract concepts, political positions, and what he terms spiritual pride over tangible material well-being, it isn't just inefficient. He calls it a literal cognitive error.
A cognitive error? Wow. Wait, let's unpack that phrase he uses, spiritual pride, because it feels like a deeply loaded concept in his essay.
Oh, it absolutely is.
It sounds like he's just clinically dissecting the human desire for self-determination. He views the emotional need for a population to say, hey, we rule ourselves as a critical flaw if it comes at the cost of their standard of living. But why does he view this pride as such an inherently negative trait?
Well, because he sees it as an emotional trap. A trap that blinds people to their actual literal living conditions.
Okay, I see.
From his perspective, the emotional high of national pride doesn't put food on the table, it doesn't build hospitals, and it certainly doesn't keep the streets safe.
It doesn't fix the plumbing.
Exactly. So he lays down a remarkably rigid definition of a good ruler to counter this.
What's the definition?
He says a ruler is successful only if they provide a life free of anxiety, sorrow, fear, and poverty.
Just those tangible things.
Yes. The origin of that ruler, or how they acquired power in the first place, simply doesn't factor into his equation at all.
So if a ruler is like one of your own people, but their policies make you live in poverty and fear, they're a failure.
Right. And conversely, if a foreign entity takes over but provides you with peace and wealth,
Yeah.
they are a success.
Wow. Okay, so to you listening right now, try looking at your own life through this ultra pragmatic, honestly, almost ruthless lens.
You have definitely a harsh lens.
Yeah, think about it. How much of your daily happiness is actually tied to the abstract concept of political sovereignty? And how much is tied to your paycheck, your physical safety, and the fact that you have reliable infrastructure?
It's a genuinely uncomfortable question to ask yourself.
It really is. But it's the exact foundation he uses to justify the historical claims he makes next.
Right, because once he establishes that pragmatism over pride is the only rational way for a human being to live, he attempts to validate this theory using what he presents as his own on-the-ground observations.
Ah, okay. So he moves from abstract philosophy to his version of empirical evidence.
Yes, he spends a significant portion of the essay detailing his 15 years living in Africa.
15 years, okay.
Yeah, and he specifically lists his time in South Africa, Mozambique, Botswana, Angola, and Tanzania.
So he was all over the southern and eastern parts of the continent.
He was, and he claims to have identified a distinct historical pattern during this time. He specifically notes an observation he made around 1998.
What did he observe?
According to Zhu Feng, across the African continent, the earlier a nation gained its independence, the worse its economic and social situation seemed to become.
Wait, the earlier they got independence, the worse they did.
That is his claim, yes.
Mm-hmm.
He points heavily to South Africa's post-independence trajectory as his primary confirmation of this trend.
Okay, but how does he actually connect the act of gaining independence to an increase in poverty? Like, what is the mechanism there in his mind?
Wow.
Because, I mean, a standard historical analysis would argue that post-colonial struggles are often the direct result of how the colonizer extracted wealth for decades.
Right, the extraction model.
Yeah, and then they exit abruptly, leaving institutional vacuums or, artificial borders that basically guarantee conflict. Does he address that extraction at all?
He largely bypasses the extraction argument entirely.
Really?
Yeah. He places the blame entirely on internal governance dynamics post-independence. His argument relies on the mechanism of elite capture.
Elite capture. Okay, explain that.
He posits that when the colonial power, or, condo management, to use your analogy, leaves, the new independent leadership rarely democratizes the wealth or maintains the systems.
They just take over the penthouse.
Exactly. A very small local elite seizes control of the state apparatus. And he argues that this new elite prioritizes their own power and wealth over the bureaucratic efficiency that the colonizers supposedly maintained.
Ah, I see.
So therefore, the vast majority of ordinary citizens are left with failing infrastructure, skyrocketing inflation, and deep poverty. All while the new rulers wrap themselves in the flag of national liberation to justify their continued rule.
That makes sense within his framework. And he specifically brings up Zimbabwe to illustrate this breakdown in governance, right?
He does. He mentions living through Zimbabwe's period of unprecedented inflation and currency devaluation.
Which was famously catastrophic.
That was. He uses the complete collapse of the currency as a prime example of the scenario where the people have technically achieved independence, but they literally cannot afford to buy bread.
Right. And that economic collapse is super central to his thesis.
It is.
And this focus on daily survival over political status leads to a really pivotal anecdote in the text from around 2005.
Yes, the gardener conversation.
Yeah. Shuafeng describes a conversation with his black gardener, and he asks the gardener a very blunt, highly provocative question. He asks, was life better when you were ruled by the British or after you gained independence and were ruled by your own people?
And according to the text, the gardener's response is immediate.
What does he say?
He allegedly replies without hesitation, life was certainly better when we were ruled by the British.
Wow.
Now, the author takes this single conversation and leverages it into a massive rhetorical challenge.
Right, because he's essentially asking if life was tangibly better under colonial rule for the working class, which obviously is a massive if, but it is his core premise here.
Yes.
What was the actual point of the global push for decolonization in the 20th century?
And he answers his own question by looking at the broader legacy of the British Empire. He expands his sample size far beyond his gardener to look at systemic outcomes.
Okay, looking at the macro level.
Yeah. He points out that Britain once had more than 70 colonies that are now independent nations.
That's a lot of data points.
It is. And out of those 70-plus nations, he concedes that the United States is a clear success story.
Sure, but I mean, with over 70 countries, surely he acknowledges a mixed bag of results. Different regions had vastly different post-colonial experiences based on their resources and, geopolitical positioning.
You would think so, but no, he doesn't view the data as mixed at all.
Really?
Yeah. He asserts that the vast majority of these former colonies saw their economies and the living standards of their people drastically deteriorate after they gained independence.
The vast majority.
Yes. And he cites a specific list of countries to hammer this point home. He names Zimbabwe, Burma, South Africa, Zambia, Malawi, Sudan, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Libya, and Afghanistan.
Quite a diverse list.
In his analysis of these nations, independence stripped away functional management systems and basically replaced them with local regimes that failed his basic test.
The test of providing a stress-free, prosperous life.
Exactly.
He is entirely stripping away the moral arc of history here.
Completely.
The drive for human dignity, the fundamental right to self-determination, the end of racial subjugation. He just dismisses all of that as spiritual pride that everyday people simply cannot afford to care about if their stomachs are empty.
That's his exact argument.
And he concludes that independence really only serves that small ruling elite who get to sit in the governor's mansion.
His focus is relentlessly on the material over the ideological.
Okay, but if physical decolonization, like the actual removal of foreign armies, flags, and colonial governors, has largely failed to provide this baseline of comfort, according to the author, how does the society actually achieve that ideal state today?
And that brings us to the second half of the essay. This is where he shifts away from political colonization and dives into the highly controversial concept of cultural assimilation.
Having established his belief that the origin of the ruler doesn't matter, only the material results, he just applies this exact same logic to culture.
He does.
And to illustrate this, he shifts his geographical focus entirely from Africa to North America. He shares an anecdote about spending 7 years living in Canada.
Right. He ran a small inn during that time, accommodating, I think, over 5,000 guests.
Yeah, 5,000 guests.
And the defining metric for him over those 7 years was the complete absence of friction.
No friction at all.
None. He notes that every single guest was respectful and civilized, and there was zero trouble.
He uses this Canadian period as his absolute blueprint for the quote-unquote good life.
He really holds it up as the ideal.
He describes it with words like comfortable, free, relaxed, and calm. He even goes so far as to call it a paradise for ordinary people. But the why is the most important part of this section. What made it a paradise wasn't just that the people were polite, it was the systemic environment he found himself in.
Right, the structural predictability is what he praises here.
Exactly.
He actually lists his metrics for this paradise. He experienced no discrimination, he faced no theft or robbery, and he benefited from superior healthcare, education, and retirement systems.
All the tangible benefits again.
Yeah. But crucially, he emphasizes the lack of arbitrary authority.
What do you mean by that?
There was zero harassment from the state, no police randomly dropping by his workplace, no government departments running surprise inspections or, demanding bribes.
As long as he obeyed the law and paid his taxes honestly, the system left him entirely alone to prosper.
Precisely.
The condo management company was practically invisible, but highly effective.
That's a great way to put it.
And he takes this blueprint of his Canadian innovative, where compliance basically guarantees peace, and scales it up to a global dynamic.
He asks a deeply provocative question here.
He asks, isn't it inherently beneficial for a culture that has figured out how to provide this peaceful, stress-free life to enter a place that is, and I'm using his exact words here, barbaric, ignorant, backward, and impoverished?
He is attempting to completely rebrand the concept of an invasion.
He really is.
Usually when we talk about a dominant culture entering a smaller or less developed one, we use terms like cultural invasion or cultural imperialism.
Which usually implies a tragic loss of local tradition, language, and identity.
Right. But Zuifeng argues that this framing is entirely wrong.
He proposes a massive semantic shift. When a culture that guarantees safety and wealth enters a place struggling with poverty and instability, he argues we shouldn't use the word invasion at all.
No.
We should call it cultural education.
Cultural education. He views the imposition of these foreign systems not as an attack on local identity, but as a desperately needed gift.
A gift.
Yeah, if your local traditions are accompanied by systemic poverty, corruption, or conflict, he argues that holding on to those traditions is just another form of that toxic spiritual pride. Wow. He's basically saying, why cling to a cultural identity if that identity is failing to provide you with a safe, healthy life?
He distills this down to an ultimate, highly polarized choice for the reader. He asks, between a barbaric war invasion and a civilized cultural assimilation, which would you choose?
He frames it as an absolute no-brainer.
It all circles back perfectly to his opening premise. If the only thing that matters is a life free of anxiety, sorrow, fear, and poverty, then the origin of the culture providing that life is completely irrelevant.
Completely irrelevant to him, yeah.
He concludes that ordinary people shouldn't resist this process of cultural assimilation. They should actively celebrate it.
Right.
If a foreign cultural influence can fix the systemic plumbing, keep the societal hallways clean, and guarantee your personal safety, you should open the doors and welcome it in with open arms.
We have unpacked an incredibly challenging and dense set of ideas today.
Very dense. To quickly recap our journey through Swifting's essay, we explored his controversial assertion that material comfort should always trump political independence for the ordinary person, framing the desire for sovereignty as a cognitive error.
Right.
We examined his claim that for the vast majority of post-colonial African nations, independence merely empowered corrupt local elites while impoverishing the masses.
Yes.
And we broke down his argument that cultural assimilation is a net positive, a form of education that everyday people should actively embrace to secure a better, safer life.
It is a text that forces a reader to clinically examine their baseline assumptions about the intrinsic value of self-determination versus the practical day-to-day value of security and comfort.
It really does.
It essentially asks you to weigh your pride against your pragmatism.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. Something that builds directly on the author's logic, but maybe takes it one step further.
Let's return to that luxury condo management company we started with.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we accept the author's premise that the ultimate, singular measure of a society is purely the material comfort and the stress-free daily life of its citizens, regardless of who is in charge,
Right.
where exactly do we draw the line between a perfectly managed society and a gilded cage?
Oh, a gilded cage.
Yeah. If the management makes the building absolutely perfect, the temperature is right, the security is flawless, the amenities are luxurious, you never have to worry about a single thing.
Yeah.
But you have absolutely no voice in the rules they set or who makes the decisions, is it still your home?
That is the perfect question to leave hanging. Because while the plumbing might be flawless, living in a building you don't control comes with its own unique set of anxieties.
It really does.
Thank you for joining us on this intellectual exploration. We know it's not always easy to look at the world through such an unconventional, sometimes really uncomfortable lens, but that's exactly why we do this.
Absolutely.
Keep asking questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep seeking out multiple perspectives. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.